Good. So, folks, Joe Plummer is the author of a new book called Dishonest Money, Financing the Road to Ruin. And I have looked through it, and this is a great primer for people who are fairly new to the Federal Reserve Bank and the system of fiat money. It kind of takes a lot of the best material that's out there, compiles it into one volume, and lays it out in clear language, and I think it works really, really well. And I want to thank Joe for writing it. And Joe, why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself and how you came to be interested in this topic and how you came to writing Dishonest Money?
Well, it started with, the tax honesty movement. A while back, I started, I'm writing these checks to the federal government, and at some point you want to find out where is this money going, what are they doing with it? And it wasn't too long before I realized that there was a lot of controversy surrounding whether or not the income tax was even legitimate, whether or not it was the regulations were being lawfully applied. Then you start getting into the fact that there never was an income tax until 1913. And then in discovering that, they hoisted this so-called income tax on us in 1913, they also created this new monetary system called the Federal Reserve. And it was when I started looking into the Federal Reserve that I was just blown away. I mean, to me, the income tax was exploitive enough, but the Federal Reserve System is just a whole other level. This idea that we have to borrow every dollar that our economy depends on to function by a central bank, and that this money is borrowed into existence out of nothing. That it's just, fiat money is bad enough. Let's say you have fiat money and the federal government is just going to create money out of nothing and it's going to spend it into the economy. Okay, I certainly don't support that, but to go a step further, how do you make that worse? Well, how about they not only create the money out of nothing, but then you have to pay interest on it. So this financial elite basically is acting as a parasite on our economy, siphoning off productivity, and earning, an override on every single dollar in our economy for as long as it exists, and also trapping us in debt. Because just as the money, when they create it out of nothing and they loan it into the economy, it appears that way. When the debt is repaid, obviously the money is then erased. Okay, so it's just an extraordinarily predatory, corrupt system, and that it even exists is kind of hard to get your mind around, and that's what I wanted to achieve with the book. I wanted to explain it in a way that people could understand it. Everybody says that it's real complicated to understand the Federal Reserve System, and a lot of times if you go out and you start searching and you're reading work by economists, it might be kind of difficult, because it's all written in economese. But the basic principles and the basic concepts really aren't that hard to understand. The hardest part to get your mind around is how criminal it is. And that was the point of the book, really, to lay it out in a way that people who are new to it can kind of get the basic idea of the stuff you hear about bank runs and currency drains and inflation and deflation and the economic cycles and all this, fractional reserves, fiat paper money versus gold-backed money, all this stuff, and how our current system, all of the bad terms that we hear about, how the current system is actually designed to cause these problems and then transfer greater and greater power to the people who created it.
Yes, and it's all coming. It's really becoming real now for all of us. These are no longer just sort of theoretical possibilities. The consequences of the Federal Reserve System is no longer just theoretical possibilities. It's practical reality right now. So certainly that makes the your book very timely, and a great time to bring that on board.
Yeah, if I could focus on just one thing, what I really want to focus on, it goes back to something that you and Ray were speaking about earlier in the show, where you were saying that you're not really sure what exactly it is that they're after. And I believe that, well, let's just go straight to Carol Quigley, okay? Elite CFR insider. The powers of financial capitalism had a far-reaching aim, nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. I believe that that's what they're after. So, I'm a firm believer that all of this is orchestrated, that these people are not stupid. The consequences of this fiat debt money system are inevitable. They're foreseeable. They've been proven over and over again. Austrian economists predicted these things, 80-plus years ago. And it's all part of creating these crises so that they can then get what they want. So let's say, for instance, when we started with the dollar being made the world's reserve currency, that was pretty much the first step. It wasn't what they ultimately wanted, which is their own global monetary unit that they control completely. But what they were able to do with this dollar is make it sort of the world's global monetary unit and then destroy its value and create now a global crisis. And then with this global crisis, and it is going to be a global crisis, I believe, well, it already is, but we haven't seen how bad it's going to be yet, they will then be able to sell what they've always wanted. At some point, when people continue to get what they want out of mistakes, you have to wonder whether or not they're mistakes, right?
Well, certainly it's very curious that you have this catastrophe, which they admit as a catastrophe, which they promote as a catastrophe, and yet nobody's been fired. Who's being blamed for this? Nobody in government. The same people that have been sitting in the House and Senate committees on financial affairs and that drafted all the regulations and managed this entire situation, and are still in Congress, in the Senate. Nobody from Treasury, nobody from the Federal Reserve, nobody has been called to account.
And on top of that, as we speak, we have Mr. Obama on the air telling us how great America is and how we will recover.
Yeah, but they never tell you how.
Right.
It's great to just speak about, use all this empty rhetoric and speak in big, warm, sweeping imagery. But by what means? By what means are we going to recover? How are you going to achieve it? They never want to talk about that. They want to talk about results because results inspire people, but they don't want to talk about the work required to get to those results. They want to weaken this country, and they've done so via economic warfare. And with that done, it will be a lot easier for them to not only create their global government, which they've wanted for a very long time, which is, again, something that I focus on heavily in the book. Another quote here from David Rockefeller, straight from the family that brought you this lovely Federal Reserve system that we have today. Quote, "It would have been quite impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries." So in other words, an unelected, unaccountable, financial, and intellectual elite will rule the world.
Well, people are faced with some pretty brutal reality right now, so they're open to hearing more. And we have a new tool in our arsenal that can be used to open minds and educate people, and it's Joe Plummer's new book, Dishonest Money, Financing the Road to Ruin. I hope that folks will pick up a copy.